Hello, dear authors and invited guests. Welcome to Technical Session 7A. Good morning to all. On behalf of Global Knowledge Research Foundation, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 6th International Conference on Information and Communication Technology for Competitive Strategies, in concurrent with the 6th International Conference on Smart Trends for Computing and Communications through Zoom. We appreciate all the participants on this platform to go along with us digitally in this unpredictable circumstances of COVID-19. And we hope you will enjoy 2 days of the knowledgeable and interactive sessions. Just before we get started, I would like to introduce you all to the chair for this session, Professor Astha Parikh. Professor Astha is a senior assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science at IIS deemed to be University Jaipur, Science March 2010. Jaipur since March 2010. From 2006 to February 2010, she was a software developer in Wipro Technologies. She has completed PhD at IIS University and her postgraduate studies at Banasthali Vidyapith. Her research interests lie in the area of programming languages, data mining, cloud computing, sentiment analysis. Thank you, ma'am. And
Thank you, Harsh.
there's a special note for the presenters that you will be given 8 minutes for the presentation and 2 minutes for the question and answers. On the 7 minutes, I will be raise a gentle reminder, and I request you all, while the presentation is going on, the participants kindly be muted. Okay, so let's start the session 7A. Our first presenter is Hemvati, and her paper title is AI-based interactive agent for healthcare using NLP and deep learning. I think so. Hemvati is not here. Okay, so moving forward, our next presenter is.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm the second other. I will be presenting the paper, sir.
On behalf of Hemvati.
I'm Anne C.V. Madonna, sir. Second other.
Okay, so you are presenting the paper, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
You may please start your presentation.
Yeah, okay, sir. So good morning, Unatal. So our paper topic is AI-based interactive agent for healthcare using NLP and deep learning. So myself, Anne C.V. Madonna, assistant professor, Department of AIDS, Savita Engineering College. So the objective of this research is to implement an AI-based interactive agent, which is nothing but a chatbot, which is useful for healthcare. So this is implemented using NLP technique and deep learning. So this chatbot is mainly used for solving the queries related to healthcare. So if a user want to get some queries related to healthcare or any diseases or any healthcare, if they want to get any information regarding any hospitals, they can utilize this chatbots. So nowadays we can see the chatbot everywhere, right? So if we log into a website, we can see the chatbot. So normally this chatbot will be used, built using natural language processing technique. So AI technique is also used for building this chatbots. So this in today's situation, so these chatbots are more preferably used by the people to solve any healthcare related queries. So these chatbots can assist them for solving their healthcare related queries. So coming to the literature survey, so the other non-Lee it will have implemented the word segmentation using NLTK. So they have directly used the NLTK library and directly used the methods used in the functions, inbuilt functions of NLTK library. Mainly they have used word segmentation functions for implementing the chatbot. So this chatbot is easier to implement and faster, but it is not that much efficient. So the other Nagana has implemented a fuzzy approach for a disease prediction. So for various disease prediction, they have used a fuzzy approach. So the advantage of this method is it is highly accurate, but since it has to scan the databases for each iteration, it has to scan the entire databases. So it is not efficient and it is also time consuming. So that's the disadvantage of the second method. So the other Jian has used an word tokenization. So this word tokenization uses the algorithm of conditional random field. So this is, when compared to the previous methods, this is more accurate, but this is less efficient. So coming to the next other, the other has used to dependency tree to understand the dependency. So when compared to the previous methods, it is accurate, but this depends on the training data. So if the training data is very high, the time taken for training will be very high, and it will be a time consuming. So coming to the final other, so the other has used dictionary method. So it is mainly used for synonym detection and extraction. And this is less accurate when compared to the previous methods. So now coming to the proposed work. So this is the proposed architecture diagram. So initially, when an user has a query, so the user will be entering their query. So this will be collected and stored in the database. So initially, the data set, so data set will be collected. So healthcare related data will be collected and it will be stored in the database. So healthcare service in the sense, so it will have some information regarding disease and its symptoms, as well as the information regarding any healthcare service. So if a person want to know about a better hospital in the region or better doctor for a particular consultants, all those information will be stored, as well as the information regarding some particular disease and symptoms. All those information is collected and the data set is created and this is stored in the database. So now if an user is providing some new information, asking some new information, which is not available in the database, even that will be collected and stored in the database. So the database will be updated each time. So this database, as soon as an information is given by or a query is asked by the user, it is given to this NLP block. So the various pre-processing steps are performed initially. So initial step is tokenization. The user may provide the query as a sentence or a paragraph. So this has to be tokenized. Tokenization is nothing but the process of splitting the sentence. So if a paragraph is given, so the paragraph will be initially splitted into a sentence. So if a sentence is given, the sentence will be splitted further into words. So that is nothing but tokenization. So here in using the NLTK library, this can be directly performed. So either sentence tokenization or word tokenization can be used. So as a result of tokenization, the output will be words. So this words will be given to the next pre-processing unit, which is nothing but stemming. So stemming is nothing but cutting of the word to its base word. So for example, if we have a word studying, studies. So the root word for all these words are nothing but study. So instead of using multiple words for denoting a single word, we can cut it off to the base word. So this process also takes place in the pre-processing. So in addition to this, punctuation removal, stop word removal, all those pre-processing steps will be performed. So once the pre-processing step is completed, the output of the pre-processed data will be given for feature extraction. So as we know that if we want to use any algorithm, we cannot provide a text or string information, right? So directly we have to provide the vectors. So our input data should be in form of a numerical form or in vectors. So in order to extract the features from the pre-processed data, any feature extraction technique can be used. So here bag of words technique is used. So in bag of words, the pre-processed data will be converted to vectors. So once all the features are extracted, this extracted features will be given to feed forward network. So here a neural network structure is used with three linear structures and two hidden layers are used. So this network is trained for 200, almost 200 epochs. So as a result, the query, the answers for the query will be given to the users. So this will be updated each time. So even if a particular information is not provided in the database, so each time a new query is added, so this database will be updated. Since neural network is used, the accuracy and efficiency of this chatbot is also better when compared to the existing system. So this is the sample output. An EUA is also created. So whatever questions the user is asking, the answers for the questions has been given. So you can see the sample. So this chatbot will be very much useful for these people for providing all the healthcare related solutions. And in today's case, today's scenario, so people may not be able to go to a hospital for getting all the solutions often. So this will be a better method for providing the healthcare solutions for the healthcare related problem for the people. So since neural network is used, this has provided better accuracy when compared to the existing method. So these are the references. So that's it. Thank you. So I have come to the end of my presentation. So any queries?
Thank you, Madonna. After the proposed, what you have showed? Proposed
sample output, ma'am.
Proposed. Okay, how much data you have taken for this?
Actually, ma'am, data related to the healthcare services, like information regarding hospitals, all those things. So in our particular city, we have collected that, ma'am. Also,
how much data you have taken for this? You have not showed that how much data you have taken, from where you have taken the data.
Yeah, data has been collected from various websites, ma'am. From internet, we have collected the data. Actually, I haven't attached the data, ma'am.
Yeah, because it is not clear. After the proposed, you have just shown the output. No table, no comparison table, what the accuracy was.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
What is the accuracy? Have you checked?
It's 90%, ma'am.
Okay. You must have showed the table, the comparison
okay,
table.
Ma'am. Yeah, okay, ma'am. I missed it. Sorry, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So moving forward for our next presenter is Lipichanda Goswami, and her paper title is Predict Future Events Over Smart Environment Through Modified a priori Algorithm.
Good morning to one and all present here. It's my privilege to show my work in front of you. So, this is the title of my topic, Predict Future Events Over Smart Environment Through Modified a priori Algorithm. Actually, when we talk about smart environment, we refers to a world where the human can perform their day-to-day activities with the help of man-machine interaction without any external person's help. So the smart environment is a domain which is interdisciplinary. Like we can use smart environment in colleges, in education, in hospitals, and so on. So researchers in different level have implemented smart environment to meet the day-to-day life easier. So here are some of the works that have been already done to make the environment intelligent. One is the CASAS project, where it is developed in the Washington State University. There they have used 3 layers: physical layer, middleware, and application layer. And for the physical layer, hardwares like sensors and actuators were used, which were connected through a mesh network. After that, in the middleware, the time span for a particular event is being given, like for suppose switching the light on there, it will take 10 minutes or 15 minutes, like that. And in the application layer, which was the topmost layer, here the recognition part was done. And here are some other activities like neural network house, where the electrical appliances would be getting switched on or off automatically without any person's interference. After that, third one is the kids room, where a perceptual world for the kids were being designed, where they can enrich their vocabulary on English language. Fourth one is the Georgia Tech Aware Home. Here also the day-to-day activities were automated with the help of sensors and actuators. Now I will come to my topic. I have implemented the a priori algorithm in context of smart environment. Like a priori algorithm is a data mining algorithm for finding frequent item sets and generating some association rules. So a priori states that basically the a priori property is like that if the there is some frequent item sets, all the subsets will also be frequent, and for an infrequent item sets, the subsets will also be infrequent. So there are basically 2 terms were used, like minimum support and minimum confidence. Minimum support is the frequency of a particular item set in context with the overall transaction. So here is the this is my flow diagram of a priori algorithm. Here we have to first calculate the support of the items. Then if the support is greater than minimum support, then this will be added to the list of the items. And then we have to increase the size. Like if first we have considered 2 items, then in the next time we have to consider 3 item sets together, after that 4 item sets, and so on, up to when the set does not become null. Once the set is null, then we have to we can calculate the association rules based on the frequent item sets. Now we will come to the challenges of the proposed algorithm. In using the a priori algorithm in smart environment, the frequent item sets and association rules can be generated, but we have seen that to predict the future events based on the past events, it is not possible to use a priori algorithm directly, since there is no fields like start time and end time of an activity. Now what we have done is that so we have got a possibility to add the time difference between the consecutive events to predict the future events. So our effort was given to introduce the time parameter in a priori algorithm. But the basic structure of a priori algorithm is that where it only takes the events, it does not consider the order of the events. Suppose here I have taken like 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, and 3, 2, 1. If 3 events have come in different orders like this, what a priori does is it simply takes it as one item set. But we have modified this property of a priori algorithm so that we can consider these 3 item sets as 3 different item sets. This is the first point. After that, we have calculated the time difference between consecutive item sets. Suppose here, this is our data set. We have the sensor ID with start time. Here, the sensor 1 has come at a time 3. Sensor 2 has come, sensor 1 has come at 10:03. Sensor 2 has come at 10:13. Sensor 3 has come at 10:20, and again 1 has come at 10:30. Like that, from this type of data set, we have calculated the time difference between the sensor IDs. Like we can see in the table, here we have calculated the duration along with the support. The duration field is added additionally, which was not present in the conventional a priori algorithm. And again, from L2 item set, we have generated the L3 item set. And again, we have calculated the duration between the consecutive items. Here is a small calculation is being shown. Like if there are 2 item sets, 1, 2, we have taken the time difference. Next time when 1, 2 has come again in the data set, we have again calculated the time difference, and we have taken the cumulative average. Rather than taking simply the average, we have taken the cumulative average of the consecutive item sets, and then the process goes on for all the all the transactions. And then for the candidate 3 item set, here we can see the candidate 3 item set. Here also we have calculated the time difference. So here we can see that the time difference between 1 and 2, time difference between 1 and 2 is 10 minutes in the item set 1, 2, and 1. But in the next point, when the 1, 2, 3 items have came together, then the time difference between 1 and 2 is different from the earlier one. So we can conclude that the item set 1, the time difference between 1 and 2 in the item set 1, 2, 3 and in item set 1 to 1 are different. It can be better understood by a real life example. Like in a household, suppose one person has entered into the room, and then he switched on the light after 10 minutes, then he may be going to switch on the TV after that. But if the man has come in a room and then switch on the light after 15 minutes, then he may not be going to switch on the TV, rather than he is going to sit in the reading table. So like that, depending on the time difference between any 2 consecutive events, we can predict what the future event can be. Once this future events are calculated, the confidence value of each of the rules are calculated to get the association rules between those events. So this is my modified a priori algorithm. Here we have generated the candidate 1 item set at first, then we have taken for generating candidate 2 to up to candidate n item set, we have used the a priori generation algorithm. Then subsets are generated and the count is incremented to get the support for all the frequent item sets. After that, the cumulative
Sorry
average.
to interrupt you, but you have last 1 minute. Please conclude your presentation.
Yes, sir. This cumulative average is calculated, and then at last this association rules are generated. So here I have given a details of the data set. The data set I have taken from the CASAS project. It contains some activities, sensors with start time, end time, and object of sensor for each transaction. So we have cleaned up the unnecessary details, and we have already only considered sensor ID and start time of the sensors to carry out this experiment. So the enhanced a priori algorithm has been implemented in Java in Windows 10 PC with using the mentioned data set, and all the frequent events occurred in day-to-day activities has been found out. Once the time value has been found according to the requirements, association rules were being generated. So here are some of the screenshots, like this item sets are generated, then this candidate item 3s are generated, and then this confidence, this association rules are generated with support and confidence. And finally, this is the diagrammatic tree that we have created based on the association rules. So in conclusion, I could say that with our work, we can predict the future events based on the present events. And as a future work, the end time of the events, if can be considered, then it will be more fruitful. So here are my references. Thank you all.
Nice presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Have you made any flowchart for your proposed algorithm?
No, ma'am. I have not made any flowchart.
Okay. Okay. Next presentation.
So our next presenter is Alka Das, and her paper title is Redefining Text to SQL Task as a Machine Translation Problem.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. Please, you may start your presentation.
Myself, Alka Das. My paper is Redefining Text to SQL Task as a Machine Translation Problem. This is the outline of my paper. Natural language interfaces are gaining popularity as an alternative interface for non-technical users. And natural language interface to database systems are being developed for the users who do not know structured query language to retrieve the data from the databases. So NLIDBs, these natural language interfaces to database systems, or in short known as NLIDBs, they accept users' query in natural language and convert this query to a SQL query, which can be executed to get the results from the database. This is not a text to SQL task because it converts text to SQL. And this is a long-standing open problem. And towards solving the problem, standard approach that is followed recently is a sequence-to-sequence model. There are a lot of work done in this area using sequence-to-sequence style models, where most of the state-of-the-art models use semantic parsing or a variation of it. And none of these models' accuracy exceeds 90%. This paper recasts the text to SQL task as a machine translation problem. The model is based on a very simple architecture as it uses an open source neural machine translation toolkit OpenNMT that implements a standard sequence to sequence model. Performance of this model is not better than the existing models in predicting on test and development data sets. But the training accuracy of this model is 99.8%, which no existing NLIDB models have achieved so far. Hence, this work may be considered as a state of the art in this research area. If we go to the history, the first attempts of language interfaces to databases appeared around 60s. Those NLIDBs were specifically designed for a fixed domain and a particular database. Hence, were very difficult to modify or to port to other application domains. In the mid-80s, the primary focus was to mitigate portability issues. In the 90s, the primary development focus was on learning approaches. And many recent works, they use semantic parsing for this purpose. And let us discuss some examples of some recent systems who use semantic parsing to parse a natural language to, actually in a semantic parsing, the natural language is converted to a logical form, and then that is converted to SQL queries. So for example, SQLizer, here NL questions is translated to a query sketch. This query sketch includes clauses, but no database schema information, hence it is database independent. And the sketch is redefined to a final query. It uses a sequence-to-sequence neural semantic parser to generate the query sketch, and the product is tested over 3 databases, MAS, IMDb, and ELF, and it was found that in 90% of the cases, the accurate query comes within top 5 generated queries. So the next model is sequence to SQL. It uses deep learning methods for translating ML questions to SQL queries. This model takes NL question and the columns of a table to generate the query, and the result of the execution of the SQL query is utilized to train the reinforcement learning algorithm. It uses WikiSQL dataset. Actually, that same dataset is developed by these people only. They are the Salesforce people, and their performance is 49% logical form accuracy and 60% execution accuracy. What are these two matrices? Actually, this logical form accuracy is the number of predicted queries that exactly matches with their corresponding gold queries divided by the number of gold queries. Execution accuracy is the number of predicted queries output that matches the output of the gold queries divided by the number of gold queries executed. So based on these two accuracies, the performance of SQL is this much. Then SQLnet is has all the merit points of sequence to SQL, and it uses a sequence to set model, and its performance is a bit better than the previous model, 61% logical form accuracy and 68% execution accuracy. Then type SQL is again a model that is built by modifying the previous model SQLnet. Its performance is 66% logical form accuracy and 73% execution accuracy on the test dataset. Then in my model, I am also using the same matrix to evaluate the query, that is the logical form accuracy and the execution accuracy. All these models like sequence to SQL, type SQL, or SQLnet, they use WikiSQL dataset and they consider semantic parsing. But my concept is I am treating it as a machine translation problem. So I have developed the dataset using the WikiSQL. So WikiSQL I considered because it's a collection of more than 80,000 examples of questions corresponding SQL queries, and the database tables are built from more than 24,000 tables. In order of magnitude, it is the largest hand annotated semantic parsing dataset, and it contains realistic data, and it provides trend event test splits such that each table is only in one split, and it can be downloaded from the net. So using from this OpenNMT, I have developed the trend test and data sets, train, dev, and test, source text files, and destination text files. I am using OpenNMT, and that OpenNMT does not provide the training parameters, does not provide a scope to explicitly provide database schema information. That's why the train, dev, and test, source, and destination text files were created from the WikiSQL dataset. Again, these files are further modified to include more schema information, so that during training the model can infer the schema information from these datasets. And all these huge source and destination files were generated by executing Python codes. Nothing is done manually, and OpenNMT can be downloaded from its site. Then after installation, I trained the model with the train and dev text files. And after training, to predict on the test source text file, the model was used for translation to generate the predicted text file. SQL queries were generated from the predicted text file after some modification. The test destination text file was also modified to generate the gold queries. All these queries are then compared to find out the logical form accuracy and execution accuracy. The result found was the training accuracy of my model was 99.8% with validation accuracy 88.2%. Logical form accuracy was 33% and execution accuracy was 49%. I also tested the system model with the development dataset and found that the logical form accuracy and execution accuracy is not also very good. It is also similar to like these figures. And if I compare the state-of-the-art models like sequence to SQL, SQLnet, type SQL on the logical form accuracy and execution accuracy on development dataset and testing dataset, these figures are better in comparison to my model. But the training accuracy of my model is 99.8, which is far ahead of all these models. So the conclusion is the training accuracy of this model is excellent, it can be used in real-life applications like chatbots, dialogue systems, artificial intelligence powered personal digital assistants, if it could be trained with sufficient real data. The further directions for improvement could be to integrate more schema information in the training process so that the accuracy could be improved to produce better results. So these are my references. Thank you. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Malika. What formula you have used for the accuracy? You have not showed the formula. You have not written the. You have not mentioned the formula.
Yes, ma'am. The formula is like. Let me show the formula.
You must have written in the slide also, no?
Yeah, ma'am. I have written that in the slide. I'm showing just. Yeah. Yeah, the formula is this is the formula: logical form accuracy, number of predicted queries that exactly matches with their corresponding gold queries. Gold queries means standard queries, means correct queries, divided by number of correct queries. And execution accuracy is number of predicted queries output, means the predicted queries are executed and their output is compared with the gold queries are executed and their output divided by the number of gold queries executed. These are the parameters, ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
So moving forward for our next presenter,
Thank you.
Chilpuri Anusha. And her paper
Good morning,
title
sir.
is, yeah, and your paper title is Performance Analysis of OFDM IM using DLD, right?
Yes, sir.
You may please start your presentation.
Okay, sir. Good morning, everyone. I'm Chilpuri Anusha, and my paper is Performance Analysis of OFDM IM using DLD. And this is my abstract. Here, the work which I have done is based on the OFDM. I have applied the machine learning techniques, deep neural network on OFDM, and I have compared the BER performance using the normal detectors and the detectors by deep learning. And this work, it presents an advanced signal detection methods, which is a wide challenge to model for OFDM IM. Here, however, the complexity will also increases when we are going for the index modulation. And along with this complexity, when we are going for the traditional detectors, it also increasing the system overhead, and BER performance is also not optimal when we are going using the traditional detectors like a greedy detector, log likelihood detector, or maximum likelihood detector. So here I have just verified with the detector by applying a deep learning network, like a deep neural network. I have used a deep neural network with fully automated connector layers for detecting the data bits at the receiver. And for this, firstly, I have trained this deep learning detector offline by collecting the set of data sets and by using those simulator results. And then I'm using that model for online detection of OFDM signal at the receiver. And the results have proved that by comparing with the deep learning based detector, it has an adequate BER performance than the traditional detecting methods. And as we all know that this OFDM IM, orthogonal frequency division multiplexing index modulation, it has an emerging promising technology in multi-carrier modulation, as it has got replaced with the classical OFDM modulation technique. But the only thing is, as we are using here the index modulation, the complexity increases, and it also leads to the system overheads, and reliability also somewhat less. So in order to avoid those issues, I am applying the deep neural network techniques on the receiver side in order to predict the received output bits. So it also given the BER performance, better BER performance when comparing to the other detector methods. And how will be the system model? So here in OFDM, it is a very optimistic technique. Here, all the OFDM subcarriers are triggered to the transmitting signal, and it also carries an additional information to maintain high performance and spectral efficiency. In this paper, I have considered a OFDM IM system with n number of subcarriers. Each n subcarriers are grouped into L groups. And the processing of a signal for each group is self and self-determined at the transmitted side. So to make it simple, I have considered only one group while transmitting only a few of n subcarriers. And I have taken the K activated subcarriers to send the P number of input data. And I have taken the M array modulation size. Here I have taken first verified with M equal to 4 array modulation size. And then I have compared with M equal to 8 and M equal to 16. So this includes a symbol which carries data and indices of active subcarriers. And these are the indices of active subcarriers. And the mapping of a combination of active subcarriers to the data bits is implemented by lookup table or by a combinational method. And the transmitted vector is constructed by alerting the data symbols which are non-zero to active subcarriers. And let us say the transmitted vector is here x equal to x1 to xn. And this xi is not equal to 0, but by course we need to have some active subcarriers. And bit to symbol mapping is denoted by x equal to OFDM of b. Here I have taken the b, number of bits. And the output signal, the received output signal is given as y of n equal to h of n convolved with x of n plus w of n. Here the bits transmission, I am considering the relay fading channel, and w of n, it denotes a Gaussian noise, white Gaussian noise, relay fading channel. H of n is a relay fading channel. And this slide, it shows how the basic deep neural network model look like. Like it consists of some hidden input layers, and the output layers. And this model I am applying onto my OFDM model. So here is a proposed deep learning detector for OFDM model. Before sending that simulated data onto the deep neural network, first I am processing the channel and the output bits which I have generated from the OFDM IM. First I am pre-processing it, and then I am applying as an input to the deep neural network model. This tan or ReLU function we will be using in order to take up the actual output, in order to pick up the actual output from the various number of inputs. And this sigmoid function, it will sum up all these nonlinear outputs. And this output of DNN, it is given as a sigmoid function of function using a tan or ReLU and the weights I'm giving. And how I'm going to train the system is, first I have trained this deep learning based detector by using the offline data, which I have obtained by simulating the OFDM IM and the various bits generated randomly to get the series of vectors. And later all these vectors which are transmitted to target receiver through the relay fading channel with AWGN noise. And here there is a provision of changing the channel on the noise vectors according to the system. And the output signal received and channel vectors are pre-processed before sending that to the trained, before sending that to the deep neural network. And the accuracy of the system performance will also be improved, and it also prevents the overfitting. And here are the simulation outcomes when I have used the deep neural network detector. And this is for a M array channel, M equal to 4. Here you can see, I have taken the channel with a perfect CSI and imperfect CSI, that is channel state information, with the known channel state information and with the unknown channel information. In perfect CSI, there will be almost none about the fading and interference. In imperfect CSI, there will be fading and interference. So I have applied this deep learning detector in both perfect CSI and imperfect CSI. And I have compared this BER performance with the already traditional BER performance. So this
Sorry to interrupt
graph,
you, but we have last 1 minute.
okay, sir. So this is a BER performance using the traditional detectors under imperfect CSI. This shows the comparison table of BER versus SNR for detection with deep learning and without deep learning. Here you can see without deep learning and with deep learning. Without deep learning, these are the traditional algorithms. When we compare by taking the SNR at 15 dB, here you can see with deep learning, we have a BER performance of 0.0038. But here, comparing to the without deep learning algorithm, this has a much better BER performance. Even in the same in imperfect CSI. With deep learning, it has a much better bit error rate performance. And coming to the conclusion, this DLD, deep learning detector, it gives efficient performance by using deep learning detection of OFDM signal in terms of SNR versus BER. And we can also do as a feature, we can apply to any channel, and you can also change the noise. And it will give the better performance when comparing to the traditional detectors like greedy detector or LNR detectors. And these are the references I have used in order to implement my paper. And thank you.
Thank you, Anusha. Nice presentations.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well formatted. Everything was perfect.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, shall I leave, sir?
Yes, you can. Please.
Thank you, sir.
Our next presenter is Ashish Rao, and her paper title is
मैं कोई बोलती नहीं हूँ किसी तो उल्टा पलटा तो इसमें लगा था मैं चुपचाप जाऊं और गई
I request presentations, please mute yourself.
our next presenter is Ashish Rao, and his paper title is Topic Modeling Based Approach for Clustering Legal Documents.
Yeah, hello. Let me just share my screen.
Yes, please.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So first of all, thank you to the organizers for giving us this opportunity. The title of the paper is Topic Modeling Based Approach for Clustering of Legal Documents. And basically, these are the authors, and I'm going to be presenting the paper. So to introduce the topic, first of all, we conducted a survey where we took a different variety of people. And out of that, almost more than 50% people were experienced in the law domain, because that is the domain of our paper. And about 61% of the survey takers, they told us that they experienced problems while searching for legal documents. That is why we came up with this solution for clustering of legal documents. Now, why we do clustering of legal documents is that it helps not only the professionals, but also the non-professionals in better searching for documents. Basically, if you have a judgment document that you know corresponds to the case that you are going through, you will be able to find similar topics that are already have taken place. Basically, precedents. Basically what we have done is we have thought of implementing a context-aware clustering algorithm and a topic-aware clustering algorithm. So usually what happens is that the services that you see nowadays, they focus mainly on the precedents. But what we want to do is, instead of solely focusing on precedents, we want to see at papers. Suppose there is a case which is related to the military. We don't want to just focus on precedents, but also similar military related cases. Or suppose the topic is environment, then similar environment related legal cases. That is why this algorithm has been designed. Now moving on. So I will first compare the work of this paper with the previous work that was carried out. So usually what happens is that for any form of clustering, may it be tabular clustering or document clustering, usually people go for traditional clustering algorithms such as k-means or hierarchical agglomerative clustering. So we found out some of the papers that did that. And the gap that we identified here was that they don't take into account the context of the document. Basically, they only focus on the similarity of words. And even though there might be a case where a document might be focusing on some other topic, but since it has similarity in the words, with suppose if there is a legal document talking about environment, but it might have word similarities with a document talking about military. I mean, this is clearly not the ideal scenario, because you want similar topics in one cluster. So that is one gap that we identified. Next was basically some papers used graph-based clustering methods. Again, basically these methods took into account only the word occurrences, and solely they were clustering documents based on that. Or basically they used to form vectors from these word occurrences. The other graph-based clustering approach was ontology-based approaches or taxonomy-based clustering approaches. But the issue with these approaches is that they do take into account the background knowledge of the legal document, but that requires a lot of context which needs to be given, which needs to be present from the very start. And if that is absent, then these methods do not work out. Then we saw that some of the document clustering approaches, they worked on the similarity metrics. Like they modified Euclidean distance and cosine distance, and basically created a similarity metric of their own to capture the main ideas. But they couldn't fully capture these ideas and barely again came down to the similarity of words. Then further on, we saw that there was some topic modeling based approaches. Now, this is what we wanted to focus upon. So LDA is one of the most traditionally used models for topic modeling, but it is very outdated and more advanced models are present right now. Then we came across a artificial neural networks based approach, but the proposed methodology in this paper has provided better results, and which I will elaborate on later in the slides. Then we came across some embedding based methods. Now, embedding based methods are very important because embedding layer in this method provides context. But the drawbacks of some of the papers was that they only provided word level context. So suppose the sentence level embeddings provide a better context because they take the whole sentence into account and not just the words. So you're assigning meaning to the whole sentence in a sentence level embedding as compared to assigning meaning to every single word. And then we came across some sentence level embedding methodologies, which are the state of the art models. And through this paper, we have provided better results through certain metrics, which I will elaborate again later in the slides. So this is our proposed clustering methodology. Basically, there is a pre-processing pipeline, which includes punctuation removal and escape sequence character removal, since it is just noise in the data. Then sentence embeddings are generated using Distilbert. Then the numerical vectors are reduced dimensionally using the UMAP algorithm. And for clustering, we use the mini-batch k-means algorithm. So to elaborate on the sentence embeddings part and why we are using Distilbert. So basically, Distilbert is a modification of the famous BERT model. Basically, what we do here is we use the Distilbert model because it is a quicker and lighter alternative. Now, if you must have heard about the BERT model, that is the transformer model, usually for translation of sentences or generative NLP tasks. So in Distilbert, there is a layer of distillation provided, which helps to provide better results by utilizing a feature called dynamic masking. And also it takes the advantage of gradient accumulation, which helps to scale up to larger data sets, and also huge batches of data are distilled at one time. So this is one of the main reasons that it is quicker, lighter, and even provides better results for our task. Next, we move on to dimensionality reduction. The uniform manifold approximation and projection, or UMAP algorithm, is used. Basically, the embeddings vector, the whole matrix actually, is a very high dimensional matrix. And if you go to cluster this high dimensional matrix, it won't provide good results.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we have last 1 minute.
Okay, sure. So basically, dimensionality reduction was done to provide better results. Mini-batch k-means was used because mini-batch k-means, it basically updates centroids and gets a dynamic cluster formation, which provides better results than the traditional k-means algorithm. Now to go on to the data set, basically we found an open source repository called Sigma Law. It had 3 categories: military, banking, and environment. Moving on to the results. So this is where we show that why the steps, each step is very important. So purity, homogeneity, and completeness, these are the intrinsic parameters that we have chosen. And these are the formulas. Moving on, since we had a label data set, we also used precision recall and F1 score. And we have outperformed the state-of-the-art models, as it can be seen. Further analysis shows that dimensionality reduction step provides better results, and using of mini batch k-means also provides better results than the traditional k-means algorithm. So in conclusion, this data set provides a context-aware and topic-aware approach, and not only focuses on the words in the legal documents, but also the general concept of the document. And even though there is a imbalance in the data, it provides satisfactory results and outperforms state-of-the-art models. So the future scope can be that some legal documents might belong to more than one topic. So implementing a soft clustering approach can also be something that can be kept for the future. These are the references that we had used. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish. Why you have taken this clustering algorithm? There can be other algorithms for the clustering of legal documents. Why only? Yeah.
So one of the main motives was a topic-aware clustering approach. Like as I mentioned, using solely k-means or hierarchical clustering, it only focuses on the words. So even though a legal document which is focusing on something related, an issue related to the environment, it might have similar words related to something which is focusing on military. So these two documents, even though they are not similar, they will get clustered in the same group, which is not favorable for us. We want topic related clusters. Each cluster should denote a single topic. Basically, the main idea of the legal documents should be coherent with each cluster.
Okay, and what is the difference between mini batch k-means algorithm and traditional k-means algorithm?
Right. Let me just scroll back to the slide where I was explaining it. So mini batch k-means usually trains the data using mini batches. This provides a better, it reduces the computation time to start off with, and it provides a faster, it provides a faster alternative to the traditional k-means algorithm, as it dynamically allocates the centroids. So the favorable result, which will probably be attained in like 20 iterations in the traditional k-means algorithm, we'll probably get it in 10 iterations in the mini batch k-means algorithm. That is one of the main reasons, and also it is more suitable for larger data sets.
Okay, thank you, Ashish.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
So moving forward for our next presenter is Yashwant VS, and his paper title is Smart Water Management, a Learning-Based Approach.
Hello, good morning. I'll just start sharing my screen. So could someone please confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, it is. Please.
Okay. Good morning to the judges and all the attendees here. I'm Yashwant. I'm here to present our research paper on smart water management, a learning-based approach. I'm here with my co-authors Vijay Lakshmi Bakle, Dr. Saroja, and Dr. Sunita. So this is the agenda of our presentation today. Moving on to motivation first. So the motivation of the research was that the efficient water management has been a challenge since quite a bit of time, because water management being such a real-time issue, it was very hard to kind of monitor it in real time and make intelligent solutions towards optimizing it. We had some hardware-based solutions such as water tank monitoring and so on, but not an intelligent one which could predict the water consumption patterns and predict what would be the next day's demand and such sort of ones. So that was the main motivation of ours. So given given that there is many more advancements in the edge computing devices, that is IoT, and smaller computing devices, and also cloud, which lets us do a lot of heavy lifting with very little cost, and also AI being now very light and very powerful now. So given all these technological improvements, we find out that there is more opportunities to improve our this problem, or provide an efficient solution to this problem. So so what we wanted to do here is to provide such a solution which is actually feasible for both industrial and domestic users, and not a lot costly. Right here, the scope of the research here is, though we have IoT infrastructure set up to run these things, the main focus here for this paper is mostly about how the software is set up to make the predictions possible, how is it integrated with cloud, and this sort of information. Moving on to the literature survey. So we have there is not a lot of work done on real-time water consumption predictions, but out of the ones that we studied, we have presented 3 important ones in the slides here. So the first one, as you see here, was presented in the Urban Water Journal in the August of 2020. So the authors here have actually used geological mobile data, that is the GPS information of a given location. So given a day and a time, if you go to a city, there is a possibility that you can fetch the all the people that are active in that area using geological mobile data. So the authors have acquired this data and correlated with it with the amount of water consumed in that city or that area in that particular time frame, and they've used support vector machines, ARIMA, and randomized tree techniques to perform short-term water demand predictions. Here short-term means for one day, right? The best performing model here was Random Forest with 90.4% of accuracy. The next one that we see here is actually this one is published in August of 2015, and it was published in the Journal of Procedia Engineering. Here here there is more relation to our project, because the authors here have actually used a smart automatic water reading machine. It's actually connected to a central data repository. So the data of water being consumed is from a huge industry. It is this is carried out in one of the French pharmaceutical companies. So there they have set up these meters, and they have extracted the hourly consumption of water, and they have analyzed it as time series data. So out of all the experiments that they have done, support vector machine has performed the best with about 37.5% accuracy. And we come to another paper here which discusses about how adding weather input improves the accuracy of water prediction models, basically. So in 2014 this paper was published in Procedia Engineering. So the authors here used various prediction techniques such as adaptive, transfer noise models, and multiple linear regression models. But so the main focus here was to establish that weather actually is a huge deciding factor, and it should be accounted for when the data is collected. So the error here with weather was reduced by almost 11%. But basically, what are the gaps identified here is that the data collection methods here are not very accurate in most of the cases that we came across. So collecting using mobile user data or something like that is not very accurate for a huge city. And also when you're talking about industries, most of the times there is water wastage, which is actually not accounted for. And also the implementations done here are for very large scale industries or cities. So it is not the costs associated with it, or the accuracies are not very aligned with implementing it to a domestic user or somebody with a small scale industry and so on. So given these gaps identified, we wanted to rectify it using our own methods. So let's move on to that. So here, right, this is the complete system architecture of how our project or our pipeline was actually established. It is more of hardware here. So there is actually a main tank in our university where we actually implemented all of these. So from there, the water is fetched into multiple departments. So using valves and water meters that are put into tanks. So these are actually controllable using signals. So basically, we analyze what is the water levels within a tank, and we decide whether the valve should be opened or not. So there is a gateway that actually communicates with all these hardware devices and sends the data in real time to the cloud to make decisions for us. Right. So now let us dig a little deep about how actually the smart prediction system here works. So within the cloud, as and when the IoT devices send data, right? So we do one thing to analyze whether if there is an emergency in the system, that is if there is if the tank is empty or if the tank is overflowing and so on. Only then we send it immediately to the cloud, or else we store it in a local database within the gateway, and then we eventually transfer it. This is done to reduce costs, because multiple access to the databases on the cloud will actually increase your cost of operations. So in case of an emergency, right, the data arrives in the cloud, and the control system takes hold of it and determines, okay, which building, which tank, is to be filled and how much amount is to be filled based on the prediction given by the AI system and things like these. Right, so this control system takes care of that, and eventually if there is no emergency, the data which is stored in the database is transferred onto the cloud, and there we have set up scripts to automatically pre-process the data for the model, train it, and update the model. So what is the advantage here? You see that water management being such a dynamic problem, it requires very constant updating. So as and when the weather changes, the amount of people in the buildings changes, it is going to keep updating. So our model should be able to account for all of these, and eventually with time it should be able to accommodate to changes. So this continuous training pipeline has been an advantage, and it has helped us more accurately predict water consumption. Now coming to how the cloud exactly is set up. So within the cloud, we are using two components. One is the EC2 instance, which actually houses the ML model, and we are using AWS Things as the control system here. So as and when the sensor data or the signals from our gateway arrive to us, we use AWS Things to determine, that is the control system, to determine if there is an emergency, or would you like to turn off or turn on, or any wall. So all the control actions happen from AWS Things because it is very, very quicker and cheaper. But if you come to the EC2 instance, here is where we have set up scripts to pre-process the model and also train it eventually, and also store the model. Once the model is stored, what it does is every day at a given time that you establish, it is going to generate the predictions based on historical data, and it is going to push that to an S3 bucket. S3 bucket is basically like a web database on the web, which our gateways can directly access and fetch the Excel files or whatever is the generation format that we have given. So from within that, they can fetch the values. So okay, let us say if there are 3 buildings, for each 3 buildings we can give what will be the amount of water required, and the valves can automatically fill that much amount of water and stop again. So with that said, let us move on to how we actually trained and prepared our models. So we'll start off with the data step description here. So for one whole year of 2019, we actually had our sensors running in different tanks. That is 4 different departments, 4 different buildings in our college, and we collected data from these 4 departments for the entire year of 2019. And the collected data was hourly water levels from the tanks. But based on what literature survey we have done, we have also understood that the weather information plays a crucial role. So we acquired out the weather information for our given locality from the nearby airports, because there are online websites which actually keep a track of the nearby airport weathers. From using those, we have actually got daily data such as cloud cover, average temperature, precipitation, and so on. We appended it to our database along with the water levels, that is the consumption of water, and also the amount of students that are available using our attendance registries. With this data, as we were telling, it was only data for 2019, but we needed more data to make our model more reliable. So we went ahead and used some statistical analysis and regression based data samplings. So we found out the correlation between how the data is actually behaving based on trends, on what time, based on the number of students, how is it changing. So based on the garden length, how is it changing. So we made some fair assumptions using some statistical methods, and we used regression based data generation tools to generate data. So that way we augmented data for 2017 and 18 also. And then we come to the
Sorry to interrupt you, but you have last 1 minute. Please conclude your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Coming to the pre-processing here, here we see that the team actually, as we were talking, the data was obtained year-wise, right? It was obtained for 17, 18, and 19. We had to merge them into a single database, and if there is any non-values, at times we had to use forward fill, because weathers are usually kind of trend, right? So whatever is the previous date is mostly going to be the same on the next day. So such sort of changes and formatting changes, such as the timestamp to data time, date time formats, and categorical fields into numerical ones, and so on. And we also applied a rolling mean of window 3, so that if there is any weather abnormality, right, sometimes in summer one single day there will be rain and so on. So to accommodate such things, we have used the rolling mean averages and to do that. So here you see on the left side the data before pre-processing, on the right that is the data after pre-processing and merging them. So for feature extraction, to find out what are the most important features, we use XGBoost using F-score as the criterion, and these are the top 3 ones that we considered for predictions. And coming back to our ML models, we actually experimented with both ML and DL models, but due to the lack of, or due to very less data, DL models tend to DL and NN models tend to get overfitted very, very soon. So we went ahead and used machine learning models only, and out of the ones that we have used, 3 are the 3 top performing models scores are presented here. So as we said, we actually established these and tested it out on 4 different buildings, right? So as you can observe, decision tree and XGBoost are quite less than random forest, and random forest has been consistently performing well on both training and validation data sets. So here you see for another 2 buildings, though the XGBoost and decision tree are slightly better here, but not as good as random forest. So on an average, if you see, the random forest model has been able to perform, with about 95% accuracy on training set and about 80% accuracy on validation set. So with that said, we'd like to conclude that given this cheap setup using free instances from AWS and a very little operation costs, so this kind of daily updating models can be feasible in long run for efficient water management, to be able to predict the demands for any set of like a domestic house with 2-3 people, or also like an industry with a lot of people. So given this, we hope that there can be more adoptions in these lines to bring in more improvements to water management systems. The future scope is that now we have to collect data before we implement it somewhere. So if we can like bring up a repository by implementing this on small localities with 50-100 people, or small households, this way we'll be able to reduce the training time, because we'll be able to further estimate what will be, using that data we'll be able to further estimate what will be the consumption for 200-300 people, or less than that, and so on. So we are basically trying to there is a scope to bring out more generalized models to be able to use without training in the future. So yeah, so that's about it for that's about it about our research, and we are open for any questions.
Thank you so much, Yashwant. Next presentation.
Okay. So our next presenter is.
Thank you.
Shreya Salonge, and her paper title is Designing an Assemble Classifier for Classifying Multi-Label Data.
Yes, I'll start sharing.
Okay, you may please.
Can you see my screen?
No, we cannot.
Okay, just a moment. Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Excuse me. Just a moment. Oh no. So my project topic is designing an ensemble classifier for classifying multi-label data. It goes through the following points: introduction, problems and challenges, objectives, problem statement, the literature gaps, the research gaps, and the major contribution, the proposed model, the data set which I have used, the result, and the conclusion and the future scope. Introduction. First, there is a greater attention given to the multi-label environment. This multi-label environment is applicable to the variety of domains such as audio categorization, image categorization, bioinformatics, text categorization, and social media mining, and so on. This data in the form of text and images has been emerging in the large amount in the real world applications. So these data represent certain characteristics. These characteristics include multi-labels, missing labels, and newly emerging classes. It makes the existing data classification algorithm face many challenges. The major challenge or the issue is faced is classification problem. Here, each instance is given a different is of different kinds and deals with several other instances which are further associated with more than one class, is called as multi-label classification. In this project, the instances can be associated simultaneously with more than one label, is called as multi-label. In this project, a new model is proposed in which contains two approaches or two techniques, that is binary relevance and classifier chain. And here we use traditional classifiers and ensemble classifiers. The traditional classifiers are KNN, GNB, and DT. And the ensemble classifiers are random forest and stacking classifier. Further, we move on to the next point, that is single label classification. Here, each class means one instance contains only one label. Here, just one instance is associated with just only one class label. It does not belong to other classes. Here, in multi-label classification, each example depends on multiple labels. Each label can be assigned with multiple categories. Here, the problem in which the input can be mapped is into different classes. Consider an example. Here, it takes class 1, class. It is divided into class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. Here, in this class only, we have labels 1, 2, 3, and 4. In multi-class, the classification of more than one class is considered. In multi-label, the example depends on multiple labels. Here, in multi-class, there is a minimum of one label. In multi-labels, it represents certain classification tasks. Here, the multi-class is mutually exclusive, that is, they are independent. And in multi-label, they are related and dependent on each other. Consider an example. This is the classification of a person. We can classify the person using name, age, gender, and a type of a disease. Here, the patient, here the person can be classified as it is having a heart disease or a kidney disease or a brain disease. So the patient can have 1, 2, or 3 any of the mentioned disease. So this is a multi-label problem, multi-label classification problem. The problems that we face and the challenges that we face in this project is the data we contain, the data we have taken contains labels. These labels are related to each other labels. So this gives rise to the classification problem. So multiple data represents features which are not properly balanced, and also these labels are correlated to each other. The objectives that we have that I have done in this project is to analyze and construct an ensemble classifiers for efficiently classifying the multi-labels, to develop a multi-label classification techniques, to design a more scalable ensemble variation for multi-label dataset, to compare the results with the traditional classifiers. The problem statement of this project is to design and construct a new multi-label classification model that uses ensemble as well as traditional classifiers that can classify the multi-label data more properly and gives proper results. The literature survey, the papers which I have referred is, first is the online variational inference ensemble based multi-label classifier for data streams. Here an online variational inference for multivariate Gaussian is proposed, which deals with the huge data streams, and also it gives superior performance. In the second paper, here an ensemble classification, a semi-supervised ensemble classification, multi-label data streams algorithm, that is co-training, named as COIND, is used, which works on the multi-label problem. In the third paper, it has evaluated an AM-LCM classification model, which uses aggregator to solve the multi-label problem. In the fourth paper, the LSML classification model is used. That is a label-specific feature model, multi-label model, which uses which has been proposed to predict a set of possible class labels. In fifth paper, an intelligent system application for multi-label classification of the pH levels are given. In sixth model, an algorithm dependent and algorithm independent models are used. An algorithm dependent means instance and label based classification algorithms are used on a classification problem, and independent support vector machines and decision trees are used. In seventh paper, the K-label set ensemble method is used.
Come to the experiment part. Come to the experiment part.
Okay. To the proposed, the research gaps. Hello?
Yes, continue.
Okay, proposed model. The data set we have taken is 5 data sets. We have split it into train set and test set. The train set, after applying the train set and test, after we have taken train set and test set, we have applied binary relevance to the train set. Binary relevance, it is a simple technique. It divides the or transforms the multi-label problem into a single label problem. Here, for example, I have taken a moment. I have taken a problem where X are the independent features and Y are the target variables, that is labels. So this multi-label problem is divided into 4 single label problems. So this is binary relevance technique. Next we have taken is classifier chain technique. The classifier chain technique is the technique where a multi-label problem is transformed into a chain of binary classifiers. Here the X part is the independent variables and the Y part are the labels. Here the green color part is the variables and the Y part is the labels. It is transformed into a chain of binary classifiers. Next, we have applied KNN, GNB, DT, RF, and stacking classifier. In KNN is a simple classification algorithm which assumes the similar things are close to the proximity of each other. So the majority of K samples that are most similar to one sample belongs to one class. So the sample also belongs to this class. So it identifies the K nearest neighbors of the test instances and then predicts the set of labels of the test instances. Then we have taken Gaussian naive Bayes. Gaussian naive Bayes is the naive Bayes variant. So it allows the continuous data and follows the Gaussian normal distribution. It supports the continuous values. Its assumption is that each class is normally distributed. This Gaussian naive Bayes is simple to train. Next, we have taken decision tree. It is simpler but a powerful learning paradigm. It is based on the sequential decision process. It is a tree-structured classifier. Here, the internal roads represents features and branch represents the decision rules. The decisions are based on the features. These first 3 classifiers are the traditional classifiers.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you have last 1 minute. Please conclude your presentation.
Okay. The ensemble classifiers which we have taken is random forest, which is a supervised machine learning algorithm. It creates a forest out of ensemble of decision trees. Here the decision trees are predictions are collected of the decision trees, and we average the predictions of the individual trees. So this is the idea of bagging, which are used in ensemble. The next is stacking classifier. Here the stacking general, it is also called a stacking generalization. Here 2 layer estimators are used, the Bayes classifier and the meta classifier. It uses Bayes estimator predictions as a input to the meta estimators, and this meta estimators work together to solve a problem. This is the idea behind stacking. After applying this all the algorithms, we are getting the test results of the respective using with respect to the BR technique and classifier chain technique, and then we predict it using the accuracy score and the accuracy graph. Here is the data set which I have taken. 5 data sets are taken. The accuracy score is calculated using the ratio of the number of correct predictions divided by the total number of predictions. The result here is here it shows that RF, that is 78.8% and 80.6%, and SC is 79.2% and 78.2%, which is fared well as compared to the traditional classifiers, that is KNN, GNB, DT, in terms of each dataset. In terms of the scene dataset also, RF, random forest and stacking classifier fared well as compared to KNN, GNB, and DT with respect to the 2 techniques, that is binary relevance and classifier chain. In terms of the emotion dataset also, and the flags dataset also, and also for the birds dataset. So this this is the percentage increase in terms of each data set where the ensemble classifiers, that is RF and stacking classifier, is compared with the KNN, GNB and DT with respect to the BR technique and CC technique. Conclusion and future scope. Here I conclude that there are two main approaches which are used for tackling the multi-label classification problem, that is binary relevance and classifier chain. Here the ensembles better fared well, that is better in accuracy performance as compared to the traditional classifiers. The result analysis shows that ensemble classifiers can classify well the multi-label data. The deep learning neural networks are considered as a future scope. These are the references which I have taken, papers which I have referred. Thank you.
Thank you, Shreya. Text presentation.
Yes. So next presenter is MSS Sunaina, and her paper title is Virtual Ornament Room Using Haar Cascade Algorithm During Pandemic. Sunaina, you may please start your presentation.
Yeah. Is my screen visible, sir?
Yes, it is.
A very good morning, one and all. I'm Sunaina. Today, I'm here on the behalf of my co-authors Manjusha and Kishore to present a paper titled Virtual Ornament Room Using Haar Cascade Algorithm During Pandemic. This is today's presentation agenda. Introduction, followed by proposed system, workflow. Then comes module description, results, conclusion and future scope, and lastly some references. So before we get started, if you allow me, I would like to ask an interesting question to you all.
Yes, please.
Okay. Respected dignitaries, have you ever thought of wearing jewelry virtually?
Pardon?
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Please proceed, as we have short
Yes,
of
ma'am.
time.
Yeah, okay. This is the idea of our presentation. Jewelry has played a crucial role in human life for thousands of years. Many women like to wear jewelry as a symbol of femininity. Not only for women, it indicates an individual status for men. Purchasers who wish to purchase jewelry, they do some activities like attempting all jewels on them and share those pictures on social media for buy. But now in this present situation, it is not safe due to COVID. We all need to be very careful. So without stopping this purchases jewelry attempts, we are here with a web application called Virtual Ornament Room. The proposed scheme identifies where the human face is located in the frame and superimposes the chosen jewelry on the face using the concept of augmented reality. From the result, we can see that all the purchasers can try the jewels by sounding safe. This is the proposed system. It is now possible with our system by trying any jewel in less than a minute. We have gone through various papers which have a similar idea of superimposing an attire, usually the clothes on a human body, and proposed this system. Initially, the customer need to face the camera. Then it focuses the face and fit the various ornaments to it and displays. There are some advantages of this proposed system. In some circumstances, we can't try all the type of jewels in offline shopping. So using this application, we can try the jewels any number of times. This helps the user to know his choice level and give a greater level of satisfaction. The proposed system application is developed with Python framework called Flask, and using some OpenCV methods, we have proposed this. We have also used HTML and CSS for beautifying our website. The user first need to view the variables on the website and choose them to try on their attire. To try on, initially they need to select the gender. As I have shown at the left side of the screen, they need to select any one of the gender. After selecting the gender, it redirects to a page called choosing your options. There we have provided two options like uploading an image and live feed option. By uploading an image or live feed, or choosing the live feed option, they can try the jewels. This is the workflow which I am talking about. After selecting the trial button, then they need to select the gender. Then after they need to select any one of the mode. Then comes all the jewels. They can try any of their favorite jewels and get a try-on experience. To achieve this workflow, there are three internal modules. The first one is finding a face on the frame. This is to detect the face on the frame using an OpenCV library in Python. This identifies the face irrespective of the given modes. Then comes detecting specific landmarks on the face. This is done by using an advanced library called face_recognition. With the help of 68 facial landmarks, we have detected these points at which our ornament to be overlaid. These are the 68 facial landmarks. These are inbuilt in advanced library called face recognition library. And finally, the overlaying the image with an ornament is the final step. In this, we need to resize the detected face. This is to be done to get a richer face region. Then we need to duplicate the ornament with a gray mesh. Why only gray mesh? Because here we are using an hair cascade algorithm, which will not detect the color images. So to get more accuracy, we need to convert it into a gray mesh. Finally, by taking the spatial points, we superimpose the customer face. As I have shown below, this is the women live feed page. There they need to select one of the ornament. And finally, the result will be appeared like in the left one. To implement our system, we have used this hair cascade algorithm. Hair algorithm is generally used for object detection. It will also do line detection and edge detection. So we have integrated this algorithm with our application in these 5 steps. First, we need to select the location from the facial landmarks. Then crop the image of the chosen jewelry and fix as a center of the first image, which is similar dimension of the convolution matrix. Then we need to compute element wise. In step 4, we'll get a result. In step 5, we need to add that result to a new image at the similar location. I will explain these 5 points with an example. As I have shown you the left screen with a face, by selecting any one of the ornament, in step 1, we need to select the facial landmarks based on that ornament. For example, here we have selected a crown, which will take the points at the forehead in step 1. In step 2, it will crop this up image of the forehead from the initial image. Then in the similar dimension, we will select the jewelry pixels and compute them with the matrix. And finally, we will get the result of the ornament. And in step 5, the resultant value will be added to the similar location as in the left image. These are also some results of the website. And finally, in the conclusion of the paper, a virtual ornament room was executed successfully using the hair cascade algorithm. This application can help user to sound safe.
Just wait a
while
second.
pursuing.
So there are many
Yes,
other
ma'am.
algorithms. Have you studied the other algorithm for face detection, object detection, except the HAR algorithm?
Yes, ma'am. We have gone through some references which consist of surf algorithm.
So have you mentioned the other algorithms in the, because I have not seen any.
No, ma'am. Didn't mention because the presentation is of 8 minutes, so I didn't mention the
So
all
why
of them.
this HAR algorithm only you have taken? But other than HAR, what are all the algorithms which you have studied?
I have studied about surf algorithm, ma'am. In references, I got a paper where they have used a surf algorithm. But in surf algorithm, it don't mention any one of the edges detection and line detection. But here in our result, we have used a nose pin also, ma'am. For that, we need to have a line and edge detection. So I have considered this HAR algorithm.
Okay, thank you.
And lastly, in future scope, we want to expand this application to available on any online website as a plugin and provide a virtual experience for the customer. These are the references which I have taken. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next presentation.
So moving forward for our next presentation is next presenter is Shashank K.S. and this paper title is Ultrasonic Based Two-Factor Authentication System for Web Applications.
Yeah, hi, that's me. I'll share my screen.
Yeah, please. And please speed up your presentation as we have lots of time.
All right, sure. Okay, our paper is titled Ultrasonic Based Two-Factor Authentication System for Web Applications. And as the title says, it provides a mechanism for websites to integrate two-factor authentication to their websites, by using our system. So these are the contents of the presentation. And to summarize, we all know how important authentication is to a system or any entity, and many two-factor authentication systems currently fail to address, different attacks such as eavesdropping and man-in-the-middle attacks. So our system aims to overcome such attacks and tries to provide a reliable, secure, and a contactless system. And we know how important contactless solutions are in this pandemic and post-pandemic era. In the near this two-factor authentication system uses sound in the near ultrasonic spectrum. So the main motivation behind this research was how data-driven the world is becoming by the day, and also how data intensive it is. So that also means there's more personal information on the internet. That in turn means there's a need for security to be amped up. So we reviewed around 20 papers pertaining to related topics, and I have some few key takeaways in the next slide. So most currently used technology uses audio fingerprinting tech, and it uses sound in the ambient. It uses ambient sound. That means it's audible. It's audible sound. It's audible to a human. And sound-based communication is something that has a lot of scope because it has a lot of unused bandwidth, unlike the other RF communication bands. Also, another thing to note here in sound-based communication is the bit rates are quite low as compared to other techniques, and you have to keep this in mind while designing a system. So also sound-based communication is being research for use in IoT systems, and that is a huge that will be a huge boom later. So coming to our methodology, this is a frame format we're using for communication over sound. So we have a delimiter to basically differentiate two different frames, and we have a unique ID which is different for every user in different points of time. And a timestamp. A timestamp is used to basically avoid replay attacks. For example, an attacker can record the sound you're playing and replay it, and it's more like he can attempt a identity theft attack, but this timestamp ensures that he cannot do such things. This is a sample payload for how we are transferring data. So as you can see, we have a assigned delimiter, a UUID, timestamp, and again a end delimiter. We combine this and we encode it using the FSK mechanism here. So as you see here, there's a result string, and then there's a sine wave generator, which is used for FSK generation, and a character dictionary. So this is one part of authentication again. So we use a custom character dictionary so that the attacker, even if he's able to somehow, get to know our payload, he does not know our character dictionary. You can assume it is a kind of an encryption technique. And the wave file writer and a music player plays sound, plays the recorded sound. So this is a spectrum analyzer, which for us, where this is our encoded signal basically at 3 different frequencies. One is the first column is the delimiter bit. The second one is the high bits, and the third one is the low bits. So this is for one particular user. So going to decoding, so the recorded sound is decoded at the backend, and that's using the Godsell algorithm. We have used the Godsell algorithm instead of the FFT system because this Godsell algorithm is more efficient when you know what frequencies you need from the data. So we knew that we need these 3 frequencies for a delimiter bit, high signals and low signals, and later we superimpose it, and this decoded output at the backend is fed into our authentication logic. So our authentication logic basically checks for the UUID for that user, and also a time limit check, which is, as I told, to avoid replay attacks. And if it is successful, the user gets access to the website or whatever he is authenticating for. This is the high-level system architecture, wherein there is a database that's connected to a trusted device and a backend server, which is the authenticator. And the desktop client is trying to authenticate here, and it speaks via REST API to the backend server. This is a detailed block diagram, and as you see here, the different parts. This is a cloud, as I said. We are using Firebase for production grade systems, we can use better databases. This is a mobile device, and as you can see here, the user ID and password check is the first factor authentication. Then as the payload, as I explained, dictionary encoding, we are using a custom character dictionary encoding here, and FSK encoding, and then the audio sound is paid via the microphone and speaker module from the trusted device. The backend system basically records the sound and just transfers the raw audio file to the server. The server receives it, does FSK decoding, and then if you've used encryption for your system, it decrypts, it runs a decryption algorithm, and then runs our authentication logic, as I've explained before. So features of our system, one is ultrasonic based communication solves major limitations of existing RF based communication standards. For example, it's low price. As you saw here, there's no special hardware that was required. There's just a phone which everyone has, a laptop which you're trying to authenticate, and servers. It provides high security because you cannot transfer it over long distances, and you need it basically verifies physical presence. Also, if you're just looking at ultrasonic communication, there is no need of internet or GSM, GPS, any such sort to communicate, and this can be used for good reasons. Improved safety, that is, sound is not an electromagnetic radiation, so it's good for all of us. I'll quickly run through future scope. So this has a potential to replace biometric authentication. So this ultrasonic based communication is contactless, and there's no fuss of registration and all that using biometric authentication. It can be used in public transport systems, and it can replace RFID cards that are being used now, especially in this COVID era. Passwords autofill. This is an extension of what we have done. a little detour, and websites can use autofill passwords even at public networks to using this ultrasonic communication. Ultrasonic payments, some people are doing, there is ongoing research on this, and this will soon come into play in the future. So to conclude, we were able to successfully create a system that can perform two-factor ultrasonic based authentication. We are also able to provide a robust protocol for communication using ultrasound with also future use in mind. Also, we have tested our system for various edge cases such as man-in-the-middle attacks, replay attacks, eavesdropping attacks, and various such attacks, and it is proven to be robust against all these. So I think I'm running out of time. So I'll drop 2 links in the chat of our system demo, and interested people can check it out. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Moving to the
So
next presentation.
the next presenter is Neha Patil, and her paper title is Virtual Stock Market Simulator.
Hello.
So, yes.
Yes, I'll present the screen.
Yes, please.
Yes. Hi, I'm Neha Patil. I'm talking on behalf of my team, in which I was working with Vinita Bhojle and our professor Khushi Khanchandani. So I'll go through the abstract quickly. Investment is a must skill in anyone's skill set, and it is also unfortunately a very costly and difficult skill to master. Beginners need a platform where they can acquire those skills without losing their money. So Virtual Stocks, which is our project, is a web application that provides a modern and easy to use solution to this problem. This paper mostly describes the need and the development process of this application. The different feature in our application is the colossal volume of financial news which are generated every day in form of unstructured data such as news, tweets, etc. was harnessed, which yielded the market sentiment that assisted the users in making more prudent decisions. So it was achieved using Vader algorithm, which is basically a sentiment analysis algorithm. The application was successfully developed with extensive literature study, comparisons, and testing. So going to the introduction, as we covered, investment is a necessary skill now, and it is almost like a secondary income to many people. Callow investors who are prone to irrational decision making due to emotional biases, familiarity biases, attention biases, loss aversions, the disposition effect, etc. So we provide a solution via virtual stocks, which will let users practice their investment skills using virtual money. The data, however, will be real. It also assists users by providing them a market sentiment of the stock. So it will help them in a more deliberate decision making. Here, market sentiment is defined as it reflects the standpoint of the investors towards the stock market. If the sentiment about a stock is mostly positive, then more people buy the stock and thus its price soars. Likewise, if the sentiment is negative, then more people sell the stock and thus its price dwindles. The news is dispersed across many unstructured resources such as tweets, financial news, etc. So we have used the Vader algorithm, which I will cover later. During the background work, we went through one paper. I will talk only about the main 3 papers that we went through. So Arul Agarwal in Sentiment Analysis of Financial News suggested a way to show how sentiment analysis has an effect on the stock prices. They also used Vader, and the author found a strong relation between news sentiment, which is like the overall sentiment of all the investors, and the change in stock price. So basically, we found out that using the market sentiment, one can decipher the changes in stock prices. In the second paper, which was prediction of stock value changes using sentiment analysis of stock news headlines, the authors had compared the different algorithms that can be used for this analysis, such as Vader, BERT, TextBlob, and RNN. The main focus was to reduce the neutral values as it increases the inaccuracy of stock market comparisons. The author proceed to conclude that Vader and RNN gave finer results than TextBlob and BERT. And the reason we chose Vader is because RNN had a higher complexity and took even more time to compute. So Vader was the perfect choice for us. Then the third paper was a virtual stock exchange simulator, Stock ET. They also tried to make an application that would educate people on practicing investment. So here, as I said, that we are using market sentiment to assist users. They had used RIS, an indicator. However, in other research papers, it was concluded that RIS isn't a very accurate tool. The tech stack was PHP, MySQL, .NET, whereas we had used modern tech stacks such as Angular and Django. Their website was not mobile responsive, and the testing was also not done. The APIs used were Google and Yahoo News, which aren't real-time news sites, whereas we had used NSE Tools Python package and Google News. So this is the system architecture of our application. The front end has Angular, and we are storing the authentication tokens in the browser. And we have also built up the authentication from scratch to ensure security. Then in the backend, we have used Django, where these two are connected by REST API. And the sentiment analyzer and everything was in the backend itself. Covering the system modules, we had all the basic features such as searching the stock, viewing the stock details, buying and selling that stock, adding it to a wish list, viewing the leaderboard, then viewing the losers and gainers of the day, then portfolio and transactions. Here are the few images from our website. The left one is the stock details page, as it shows that interactive graph and the details. The right one is the profile. We also try to provide some data visualizations to track the user's progress and show in a visual manner how their portfolio looks like. So coming to the algorithm, we had chosen the Vader algorithm for the market sentiment analysis. So it basically recognizes the polarity, that is positive, negative, or neutral based on the news, like how they are feeling about the stock, positive, negative, or neutral. The advantages of using this model were that it did not require any training data. So it was perfect for our data, which was the news source, because it is the real data and it is unlabeled. Then the second advantage was it was attuned to the social media text as well. So it recognizes slangs, punctuations, etc. So the Vader results were 99% accuracy. And the graph on the right side shows the output that we provide the user in the application. So after the application was built, we tested the application using JMeter. Extensive testing was done so that we are sure that the application is stable and reliable. So this is the aggregate graph. Basically, it is the green bar is the 90% bar, and it means that 90% of the samples responded within that indicated time, like the particular time that is written, 13 milliseconds. Then this is the response time graph, which is like the response of every request taken by the time frame. And it was pretty decent. So coming to the conclusion and future scope, we had successfully developed the application which would help users practice the skills, and also we had given an extra feature that was not available, that is using natural language processing. We gave the market sentiment and thus helped users in making the decisions. Through Vader, we achieved a 99% accuracy score, and it was at least double the speed compared to the other sentiment analysis algorithms that we tried. Then the load testing of application also produced an error rate of 0%. The virtual stock surpasses the existing systems due to the modern tech stack, mobile responsiveness, market sentiment analysis, and extensive testing. Further aim to continue enhancing the application and including more modules. An algorithm can be developed to recommend similar stocks to the ones the users bought. The performance can also be improved by focusing on a potent way to deal with such huge volumes of data and increasing the security. Basically, every day we have to, for every stock, we have to compute the market sentiment, and it was taking a toll on the performance. So we have to look at ways to improve that performance as well. These are the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. Nice presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so we have completed all the presentations today session.
Harsh, can I ask a question?
Yes, it is.
Okay, hi Neha, I am Vinu from Gujarat, India, Kerala. So I would like to ask a question like, where did you get the real-time data for the stocks?
Yeah, the real-time data for the stocks was using NSE tools package. It is a Python package.
So actually the NSE stocks and are all paid one, right? So how did you get it for free?
Actually, I think for some amount of samples, like for some amount of request, it is free, and the rest of it is if it crosses some amount, then we have to pay for it.
Okay. So another question, like what were the features you use for sentiment analysis, and what kind of sentiments were considered for this particular project?
Yeah, so that is we used Vader because we could feed in the raw financial news, and it divided it into three categories. That was positive, negative, and neutral. So in the starting, I mentioned that we had to reduce the neutral values because that neutral category does not help in the decision making, right? If anyone is feeling neutral about the stock, it doesn't help. So Vader, in that literature survey, it showed that Vader also reduced the neutral values, and it performed better in terms of performance and accuracy. So like there are three categories: positive, negative, and neutral.
Okay, Neha, thank you for answering the questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck with your work.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, so we have completed all the presentations today's session. Now I would like to thank sincerely thank our authors for their excellent presentation in this session, and all our present participants for being a part of this international conference. I hope this session was informative enough, and all the presenters would be getting their digital certificates to email within 2 working days. Further, all the papers have been already forwarded to the Springer, and the publication will be live within 5 to 6 months. Kindly cooperate with the conference team. And I also thank our session chair, Professor Astha Parikh. And ma'am, there is a token of appreciation to the chair on behalf of Team ICTCS 2021 and Team SmartCom 2021 and the Global Knowledge Research Foundation.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you again for inviting me to the conference. And it was a wonderful experience. An excellent job by you and your team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you for chairing the session and for your valuable presence. Okay. Now I request you all to turn on your camera for the quick snapshot and making this conference more memorable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harsh.